intuitive eating is like your own internal Instagram. When you get a notification from your body saying what you need, you listen. If you want sugar, girl, you eat sugar. If you want cake, girl, you eat the cake. If you want chips, girl, intuitively, your body knows you want chips. You eat those damn chips, Brenda. Today we're gonna discuss flexible dieting versus intuitive eating. All right, today we're talking flexible dieting. What's going on, guys? Today we are talking about flexible dieting versus intuitive eating, two really hot topics in the fitness world right now. What I want to do is I want to break down what each one is individually, because there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about what they are, and then understand what they actually are, and maybe which one is better for you or worse for you depending on your individual needs, preferences, goals, personality, Hogwarts house, whatever it may be. So let's get into it. So we're gonna start it all off with flexible dieting. We're gonna do this Instagram versus reality scenario. Gonna bring in Kenzie Morgans, gonna bring in Johnny Bag of Donuts. If you're new to the channel, you'll very quickly see who they are, which, by the way, if you are new to the channel, like the video, subscribe if you don't already, hit the little bell thing to make sure you get notified when a new video comes out, unless you don't like the video, in which case you shouldn't hit the bell or subscribe or even like it, just because the fuck are you gonna do that for if you don't like the video? Let me get into it, okay? So let's talk about flexible dieting. So before we define flexible dieting, I wanna show you what flexible dieting is not, and basically the two most common ways people misrepresent flexible dieting on Instagram. So to do that, I'm just gonna bring in Johnny Bag of Donuts. Okay, don't listen to that asshole. I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know about how to be a flexible dieter. But first, one sec, get my brows on fleek, looking good. Let's get into it, okay? So what is flexible dieting? Here's the deal. In my real life, to look this good, what I mostly eat is tilapia, grilled chicken, broccoli, and rice. That's my life. Flexible dieting isn't what you actually do. Flexible dieting is what you want people to think you do. That's what Instagram is. It's not what you do in real life. It's what you want people to think you do in real life. That's how you get chicks. That's how you get more followers, right? So here's the deal. Most of my life, broccoli, tilapia, chicken, vegetables, that's it. But in Instagram, pizza, Pop-Tarts, cereal, chimichangas, churros, gummy worms, that's flexible dieting. Basically, my goal here is to make people think I'm eating unhealthy all the time and still looking good. That way, they buy my ebook, they buy my coaching program, I eventually become a business coach and charge outrageous amounts of money for people to pay me to teach them essentially how to manipulate and lie. That, my friends, is flexible dieting. So that's the first misconception about flexible dieting, which obviously, it's not the truth. That was very redundant, but I'm gonna keep going because I've done this take about 27 times. Anyway, a lot of people will try to make you think that flexible dieting is eating a bunch of junk food. They're gonna make you think that it's eating pizza and Pop-Tarts and Pringles and cereal and sugary foods and da-da-da. Rico's laughing in the background, so I'm struggling to concentrate, but please, I'm staying on point right now. Flexible dieting is not about eating a bunch of junk food. No matter what you see on Instagram, no matter what you see on YouTube, no matter what you see on TikTok, what you see on Twitter, what you see on Facebook, anywhere. Flexible dieting is not that. And I wanna get into it a little bit more. I wanna show you what flexible dieting actually is. But first, there's a second misconception, and I wanna bring in Kenzie Morgans to show you what that misconception about flexible dieting is. She better pick up.
What's up, girlfriend?
Brenda, I am pissed. And listen, Brenda, girl, babe, I love you so much, but I need you to just listen, because I'm really upset right now. I've been flexible dieting for like 6 months. 6 whole months, I've been doing this whole flexible dieting thing, and I haven't seen an ounce of progress. Literally not an ounce of progress. And by the way, I'm doing it perfectly. I'm doing literally everything perfectly, because if you know what flexible dieting is, you know that you can just always keep getting back on track, and it's impossible to screw up, which is important to understand. I'm allowed to eat whatever I want in whatever quantities I want every single day, as long as the next morning I'm always saying I'm back on track. That's it. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is what you say. And as long as you're back on track and saying it verbally, then you can still go off track every day. And that's what flexible dieting is. It's just not actually doing what you need to do. It's saying that you're getting back on track without actually following through. And I don't understand why I'm not seeing progress, Brenda. And that's the second misconception about flexible dieting. Right now, it's the one that's most important to me to really clarify. Because flexible dieting, if you do it properly, I'm gonna explain that in a second, can really help you build a better mental and emotional relationship with food. And for me, if you don't have a good mental and emotional relationship with food, you're not going to have a good relationship, period, and you're going to have a hard time improving your body composition, getting stronger, and having an overall healthy lifestyle. But a lot of people take flexible dieting to an extreme, which is what we do in the fitness industry. We take things to an extreme. And what I'm seeing people do now is say they're flexible dieting, but they're not actually doing what they need to do. And essentially they're taking this 80-20 rule and they're making it the 50-50 rule. They're not doing what they need to do 80% of the time, and instead they're actually doing it 50% of the time, and they get upset that they're not making the progress they would be making if they were actually doing it 80%. And this is where, number one, we need to manage expectations better, and number two, actually be aware of our actions to make sure that what we're saying lines up with what we're doing. So we know what flexible dieting is not. Thank you, Johnny Bags. Thank you, Kenzie Morgans. But now I want to talk about what flexible dieting actually is and how you can use it effectively. But first, we're going to take this inside because it is outrageously hot out here. So 1 second. This is good. Okay, so got my coffee out of the heat. Flexible dieting, the way that I view it, it's a way of eating that allows you to achieve your goals without feeling guilt or shame when you aren't necessarily on track. And that's what I think is going to allow people to develop the healthiest relationship with food. When number one, you're eating in a way that supports achieving your goals. So if you want to lose fat, you're losing fat. If you want to build muscle, you're building muscle. But it's not creating any anxiety or worry or fear or guilt or shame around the foods you're eating, around the idea that some foods are good or bad, around the ideas that some food are inherently fattening, around the ideas that some food are inherently dirty or you should never eat them. That's what flexible dieting is. It's being able to say 80% of the time, you're going to eat in a way that supports your goals, that supports your physique-based goals, that supports your performance-based goals, that allows you to lose fat and build muscle and get stronger. And the 20% of time that you don't necessarily stick to it, it's okay. You didn't screw up. It's not a problem. Just get back on track. And this is where that confusion comes in, where a lot of people, when you only hear people talking about just get right back on track and there's no such thing as a good or bad food, when you take it to that extreme of, oh, well, then that just means I can eat as much as I want all the time, but then they get frustrated that they're not making progress. This is where we have that like headbutting in this industry. Flexible dieting still allows you to make progress towards your goals. There's just no guilt or shame when you do go off track. But you have to remember, if you want to make progress and your goals are physique related, body fat, strength, muscle, there's gonna have to be some form of strictness, some form of rigidity. It doesn't mean that you have to feel bad or guilty or shameful when you aren't on track, but it does mean that if you have goals that you want to prioritize, there has to be some level of dedication involved that maybe is a little bit difficult. And this is almost taboo to say in the fitness industry these days. It's almost taboo to say that you aren't going to give in to your every single desire. It's almost taboo to say that you should stick to something even during times where you might not want to, which to me is mind-blowing. It's like, if you want to accomplish anything, you can't just give in to your every desire. You're going to have to make sacrifices. And this is, to me, what flexible dieting is. Being able to make these sacrifices that you want to make to achieve the goals that you want, that you've defined for yourself. No one else has defined for you, you've defined them. But when you do have the times that you do go off track, or you go on vacation, or maybe you sleep in, or whatever it is, and then you end up deciding that, like, you know what, or it's a birthday party, or it could be anything, an anniversary, you do go off track, you don't get mad or upset or guilty or anxiety ridden, you just get back on track. And that is flexible dieting. So now we're gonna talk about intuitive eating, and we're gonna follow the same format. We're gonna have Kenzie Morgans come in, and she's gonna explain how Instagram falsely portrays what intuitive eating is. And I'll come back out, and you and I are gonna sit down, we're gonna have a chat, we're gonna drink our coffee, we're gonna discuss what intuitive eating actually is, and then we're gonna compare the two and see which one might be the best fit for you. Brenda, I need you to pick up. Brenda, please pick up. Pick up. Oh my God, Brenda, I'm so glad you picked up. I know I was telling you I was doing flexible dieting, but that was literally, I don't know, what, 15 minutes ago? Now it's intuitive eating. Listen up. Okay, so intuitive eating is basically just saying that your body knows what it wants. It knows, it's just trying to tell us. And all of this diet culture is trying to prevent us from listening to our own internal notification system. Intuitive eating is like your own internal Instagram. When you get a notification from your body saying what you need, you listen. If you want sugar, girl, you eat sugar. If you want cake, girl, you eat the cake. If you want chips, girl, intuitively, your body knows you want chips. You eat those damn chips, Brenda. That's what intuitive eating is. You don't say no to anything at any time. Diet culture it's just awful, okay? Awful. Basically, intuitive eating is our way of saying diet culture, screw off. I'm gonna eat what I want, when I want, and you can't tell me what to do. I got my notification system on, I'm eating that fucking cake. Okay, so that's obviously not what intuitive eating is. And just really quick, if you liked that skit, you think Kenzie's funny, give the video a like, subscribe if you don't already, hit the bell so you know when Kenzie comes back, another video comes out. But I wanna talk about what intuitive eating actually is. From my perspective, intuitive eating is the pinnacle of what we should be trying to achieve. It's the highest level and most advanced way of eating. And I think what happens is a lot of the messaging gets misconstrued. And it's almost because of the name. A lot of the intuitive name subcontext makes people think that it's what we should know intuitively as humans. And they'll use the example of like, do you think that when we were cavemen, we had to like count our calories? I'm like, do you think that when we were cavemen, we had a cupboard full of fucking food at any point in time? Do you think when we were cavemen that we had readily available stuff? It's like, using that argument is the most outrageous logical fallacy. If that's what you actually believe, that you're just gonna follow everything we did as cavemen, don't live in a fucking house with air conditioning, don't drive a car, don't have any modern appliances, don't use that fucking example if you actually wanna have a logical conversation. Intuitive eating is not what we know intuitively just by being humans. Intuitive eating at its height, at its pinnacle, at its best, at its most advanced form is what you do when you've learned how to appropriately feed your body in terms of you know how much energy you're putting into it, you know how many calories you're putting into it, you know the difference in macronutrients, you know what carbs are, you know what fats are, you know what proteins are, you know what foods are generally making you feel good, and you know what foods are generally making you not feel so good. I recently got in a conversation with a woman on Instagram. Basically, she was like, you should be intuitive eating. Calorie counting has no place in anyone's life. You should just intuitively eat. And she was like, you shouldn't have to teach yourself have to eat, it should be intuitive. And I said, interesting. How does one become an intuitive eater? And she goes, well, it takes a while, but after some time and some practice, you learn how to listen to your body signals. And I was like, oh, so you do have to learn to become an intuitive eater. And she was like, well, no, that's not what I meant. And here's the deal. A lot of the people who say intuitive eating doesn't involve calorie counting used to calorie count. They used to be tracking their calories. They used to track their macros. They have a long history of understanding how many calories they're putting in their body. They have a long history of tracking their carbs, tracking their fats, tracking their protein. And that's important because when you have that in your history, you don't necessarily have to consciously think about the foods you're putting in. You can recognize it subconsciously. You can know that there's 25 grams of protein sitting on your plate. You can know just by looking at what you're eating for that meal and what you're looking at for that day and what you're doing for the entire week, generally what your nutrition looks like. And not to mention the skills that you've built up over the years, tracking your calories, tracking your macros, will carry over into what you're doing now. Maybe learning through that process will change what you're eating intuitively so that once you're not tracking calories anymore, your nutrition is still in check. Another thing that a lot of people in the intuitive eating community will say is, your body just knows what it wants. It knows. And I'm always interested by that. I'm like, well, how does it know, or what does it know? And one of the examples that someone gave me recently was, if your body wants protein, it will tell you. And I was like, interesting. How does it tell you? You learn to listen to your signals. This is a real conversation I had with people who are very deeply involved in the intuitive eating community. The issue that I had with that is the same person says that you shouldn't track your calories, there's no reason to track your macros, you shouldn't be learning this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, if someone doesn't ever track their calories or doesn't ever track their macros, and they don't know what a good source of protein is, how are they supposed to know how to feed their body when they're getting these signals from their body, whatever these signals are, to eat protein? Your body will tell you, she said. And that's the response. The response is your body knows. Your body knows what's right for you. Your body will tell you. And that's not true. That is not a genuine, accurate statement. The only way to become a true intuitive eater is to, number one, educate yourself enough to understand what you're actually putting in your body. That's the first step, is education. And for some reason that's really mind-boggling to me, this intuitive eating crowd is often pushing away from education, saying do not educate yourself on what your body needs, just trust your body. It is mind-boggling and actually very scary, but I've realized something. A lot of the people who are pushing this narrative have very negative relationships with their own body, either in the past or still in the present. And a lot of them have done figure competitions and bodybuilding shows, and they openly talk about their past with binge eating disorders, which I've done as well. I recently did that in my last videos, my discussion on my own past with binge eating. They openly talk about their own body image issues, and which is amazing. I think it's very important and very courageous to talk about that stuff. But they say that it was calorie counting and macro tracking that caused them to have these issues with their body, and that is not accurate. Calorie counting and macro tracking very well might have been one of the things that led to it, but it did not cause a disordered relationship with food, and it did not cause any body image issues. That's coming from internally. That can also come from societal pressures, absolutely. It can come from your parents, your siblings, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. They just can all compound it. Educating yourself on what you're eating is not causing a disordered relationship with food. Educating yourself on what you're eating is not causing body image issues. Becoming obsessive compulsive about it absolutely can. Taking it to an excessive degree absolutely can, but education is not causing that. And pushing people away from education is disingenuous, it's dangerous, and it's leading people to believe that there's more fear around this stuff than there actually is. Because if we look at what calorie counting and macro tracking actually is, it's just education. So you're more aware of what you're putting in your body, and so you're more aware of what options you have available to you. Maybe you have an allergy. Maybe you don't like a certain food. Maybe you live in an area in which certain foods aren't available. And all this education does is it opens your mind and gives you the opportunity to learn how to be a critical thinker, and also to learn how to feed yourself in a way that makes you feel your best. Now, the last part that I really want to dissect with this intuitive eating world that's really coming out now is this idea that you should always just give in to whatever craving your body has. If your body is craving sugar, just eat the sugar. If your body is craving sweets, eat the sweets. If your body's craving chips, eat the chips. If you're craving cake, eat the cake. And that's what a lot of people in this community are saying, because what do we do when in the fitness industry? It runs on a pendulum of extremes. And that's where the pendulum is swinging now. Just eat what you want. Don't say no. Don't limit yourself. This is all diet culture. Anyone who says that there isn't a diet culture, they're not really being objective. Of course there's diet culture. Of course models and magazines and movies and all this stuff, it plays a massive impact, has a massive impact on how we think about ourselves and what we're supposed to look like. Just because that's going on in society does not mean that we as individuals have zero responsibility for our own health and well-being. Yes, there's a lot of bullshit in diet culture, absolutely. But what's more important than what's going on in diet culture is the decisions you are making as an individual about your health, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, all of this. You have the personal responsibility and the ability to make your own choices for you, regardless of what society is putting on you. And a lot of people hate to hear this. They hate to hear that it's not society's fault. Why? Because if it's not society's fault, it's on you. And that's a tough pill to swallow. It's like a tough bottle of pills to swallow. It's easier to blame society, because when you blame society, you take all blame off yourself and you can do whatever you want. And you can play the victim card. And that's what a lot of people do with this. They play the victim card. And by the way, for whatever it's worth, I get it. And oftentimes you deserve to play that card. It's not a question of whether or not you don't deserve it or you can't. It's a question of what's actually better for you. What will you benefit from most? Are you gonna benefit more from blaming society or taking your own personal responsibility to take action to do what you can do with the cards you've been dealt? If you choose to just blame society, then respect. I understand, and you can do that. But I would bet a lot that if you chose the other route, to take your own personal responsibility to do what you can with what you have, you're gonna be happier and healthier. And It's harder to take this route. It's harder to take the route of taking personal responsibility. But if that's the one that's gonna make you happier and healthier, I would say it's probably be worth it. So anyway, when people are telling you to give in to your every desire, to just, when you crave sugar, eat sugar. When you crave sweets, eat sweets. When you want the cake, eat the cake. When you want the pizza, eat the pizza. When they're telling you to do that as a way of saying fuck you to diet culture, what they're actually doing is making it much harder for you to have a healthier relationship with food, to live a healthier life, and to love yourself. This is very important because part of loving yourself, part of living a happier and healthier life is having goals and achieving them, going through the process, doing the work. And if you have a goal of losing body fat, I say go for it. If you have a goal of getting stronger, I say go for it. If you have a goal of any sort, I say go for it. And what a lot of this intuitive eating mindset will say is, they're trying to say, don't do it because we need to say F you to diet culture. And I say, F you to diet culture, but also do what you need to do to achieve your goals. And if that means not giving in to your every desire and eating the cake just because, oh, well, you know, I wanted cake, and not eating the entire pizza, oh, well, you know, my body said I wanted pizza, so I ate the whole thing. If that means being a little bit strict and not giving in all the time, that's a good thing. Because practicing self-control, that's not imposed on us by society or culture. That's just a good characteristic and a good human trait to improve yourself, to get better, to achieve your goals. And anyone who tells you otherwise, what they're probably doing is they're saying that as a way of justifying their own inability to practice self-control. So what is intuitive eating? Intuitive eating is the highest level, the pinnacle of eating. It's where you already have probably tracked your calories and macros. You understand how much energy is in a certain food, and you understand what foods make you feel good, what foods don't make you feel good. And after going through this process of learning, you can eat in a way where maybe you don't have to track anymore, you don't have to count anymore. You just have a generally good idea of what you're eating, when you like to eat, when you need to eat, and what makes you feel best without actually having to think about it. And it takes a long time to get to that level. It takes a long time. And along the process of reaching that level, you're gonna have ups and downs, you're gonna have struggles, and that's okay. But this is the ultimate pinnacle of what most people would strive to achieve or should strive to achieve. Because when you get here, you can focus less on food and more on other things going on in your life. And I think what's really important is when we're talking about flexible dieting and intuitive eating, they're not completely different. In fact, I think they're very much intertwined. In order to become an intuitive eater successfully, you first have to become a successful flexible dieter. I think this is the first step to becoming an intuitive eater. Because an intuitive eater is someone who does flexible dieting as part of their natural daily processes without actually thinking about it. Flexible dieting, this is probably where you're still tracking your calories and your macros. You're learning what feels good for you. You're learning the process of how to be in that 80-20, not the 50-50. This is step one, and mastery here will lead to intuitive eating. But if you try to do intuitive eating before you've actually developed a healthy, educated relationship with food, you're gonna be spinning your wheels. I hope this video helped. Please leave some comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. If you agree, disagree, whatever. Like the video if you did. If you didn't, I apologize. Hopefully next time I can do better. Subscribe if you don't already. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.